click a button, right?
Yes, you do. That's apparently all. A little
Find the
thing.
button.
Yeah, it was finding the button, which was the hard part. Rick, it looks like we lost Bob momentarily, or maybe he left, so, but just FYI. Oh, but he's back.
Okay.
And for commissioners, we have Laura, Alex, Jan, John, so we're just missing
Richard and Joseph.
Yeah.
So Kate, do you think we're set for the presentation with Our Planet when we get to their spot?
We can test sharing their screens, or if I let me redrop my address in the chat if there's a worry about screen sharing. We didn't test everyone's mic, but
Bob, it looks like your mic is on and you have the presentation. So Katie's just now checking about sharing the screen.
yeah, so give us a minute, Jeff. I'm gonna Bob, is it okay if I practice screen sharing with you really quick to see if you can get
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
There we go. You've been sent
of course, open system preferences again. Let me see what I was going to try to email you the presentation, Kate.
that works.
Let's see.
You might as well do that as a safety or to someone. Yeah.
Hold on. What's going on?
Doesn't look like it's sharing your screen. If you want to.
Give me 5 minutes and I'll email you the presentation.
Sure,
If that'll be okay?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. I'm going to go back to me sharing. Okay, Jeff, we're still missing a couple of folks, so whatever you want to do.
Okay, I think we can get going. We got Rick and Octavio that are their videos are showing. I don't know if we just want to show the commissioners. Bring them up.
Perfect.
It's their time. Very good. Alrighty, it is 1:02 on October 23rd, 2020. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Statewide Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling. This is the Recycling Subcommittee. So I'd like to start off the meeting by doing a quick roll call to establish quorum. So, see, Commissioner Bouchard.
Here.
Commissioner Dell.
Present.
Commissioner Ferrante.
Here.
Commissioner Kalpikoff. Not present. Commissioner Lapis.
I'm here.
Commissioner Oseguera.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Commissioner Valle. Commissioner Valle, I think, will be dialing in about 2 o'clock. I think he had a county supervisors meeting that was running late. So we do have quorum. So I'd like to move on to public comments for today's meeting. Do we have any?
There are no public comments received before the meeting up until now.
Okay, very good. We're already ahead of schedule. So then meeting notes from the last meeting. Kate, thank you for sending those out. Did any of the commissioners have a chance to review them? See any items that need correction or items that we would like to add? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Motion from Commissioner Bouchard, second by Alex Oseguera. Thumbs up, all those in favor? We are unanimous. Very good. Alrighty. Well, today we got a couple things to go over. We're going to talk about some potential plastic policy recommendations that Commissioner Dell will be able to take us through. We have a presentation from Our Planet Earth. They are a plastic PET reclaiming operation down in Southern California, so they'll tell us what they're doing, and I think they have an announcement about some good things that's happening in the industry. And then towards the end of the meeting, we will talk about some bottle bill problems and solutions. So if we could move on to the next slide. And Commissioner Dell, do you want to kind of walk us through these and see what discussion we have with commissioners? And what I did is I took your slide and broke it down from one big slide into three that I think we can see a little clearer. So if you want to take us through these.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm in a hotel room, so I don't have any props with me today. I guess you're lucky. I'd normally be bringing out lots of examples, but we can all just look what's on the slide here. So the purpose of this policy recommendation was really just to simply require some simple design changes that would require design for recyclability, some minor marketing design changes that would allow a plastic bottle or a can that had this marketing aspect to it that was preventing recycling or harming recycling, require it to change to something innocuous, and conventional options exist. And in each one of the cases I'll show, some products use a marketing or device or a shrink sleeve or what have you. That's fine for recyclers, and others use it to have problems. And so the requirement would really simply be make the bottle so it can be recycled today. And the first one is these non-compatible harmful shrink sleeves. And it's a bit of a complicated topic in the sense that there are some shrink sleeves that are fine, and those would be fine. And then there are definitely some that cause problems. And so what we would be doing in the policy recommendations would be to say, we require that the problematic ones not be used in California within a certain time frame. And then what guidelines would we follow? Well, the Association of Plastic Recyclers does have a detailed design spec, but I don't recommend that we directly follow that, because I've been told by California processors directly, when I ask that question, can we just use that? They tell me no, because in some cases, some of the labels that have been approved require a lot of wash water. And as you all know, we're water scarce. Already the plastics processors are recycling the water, and to use more and have to recycle more is just really tough when you could switch to a better label. Or in other cases, unfortunately, some of the labels that have been approved actually require the purchase and installation of new equipment. And so what the final labels would be, that would be yes or no, would take a little bit more detailed technical look at, and could get stakeholder input and so on. But definitely there's a wide range of items right now that the producers admit they're not recyclable. So they actually put labels on, teeny tiny labels that say you should cut this off. Well, all of those sorts of labels, the policy would be, no, let's just not use them. So there's simple solutions. And in this picture, 2 mayonnaise bottles. One has a shrink sleeve that requires being cut off, otherwise it will gum up plastic processors. And I'm told the plastic processors, if they get that, they're just gonna throw it out, hopefully, and if they can find it and not have it processed. And then the other one is a mayonnaise bottle that just has a paper type label. So are there any questions on this?
Let me open up the comment box just so I could see everybody. And this is a concern that was addressed by Paul Gasau from Global Plastics. And there's a lot of bottles, PET bottles, and even the number 2 bottles, they'll have labels on them that they just can't run through their system. So they'll go through the curbside program, through the processors, through the baler, on a truck, to a reclaiming facility, only to be rejected and end up in a landfill. So if we had the state adopt a policy to just not allow the use of shrink sleeves or non-compatible labels, and it's not just for bottles, even aluminum cans are starting to use plastic shrink wrap on them because it appears to be an efficient marketing mechanism. It doesn't appear to have anything to do with the safety or stability of the products inside. So I think this is something that we should consider. And just from other commissioners, is this something at a point we would want to move this up to the entire commission for additional discussion and consideration? Any thoughts? Do we need more information on this one?
No, I think Commissioner Dunleavy, I think it's time to move this forward to the broader commission so that there's additional discussion, feedback, and input. So there's the need to review, rethink, analyze. There's an opportunity to do that, and for stakeholders to also provide input.
Okay.
Jeff, I think Laura and I were in the queue.
Oh, sorry about that. Nick?
No worries. Laura was before me.
Laura, Commissioner Ferrante.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, everyone. I agree with Alex. I think we can move it forward. But Jan, I'm just wondering, you said that there are different kinds of, you wouldn't recommend going with the design specs. There are different kinds of shrink sleeve wraps, and some are problematic and some aren't. What's the difference, and what makes some problematic over others? And, is there a reason that some are used instead? The problematic ones, I guess, just what's the difference?
So there are a range, and if we just look at shrink sleeves, and so there are a range of them, and why they choose to use them, I just have to assume they're cheap, they're easy to put on, and it serves a good marketing capability. I assume that's why they're using them. But what makes them bad, I think I've gotten technical before, is like the one I'm showing right here. It's actually PETG. It melts first. It clogs up the machines before PET does. It sinks with PET, so it doesn't separate. So the paper one shown here, that could go into a PET processor, a mechanical processor, get chopped up, and the paper floats off and the PET sinks. And so that's why that paper one's fine, but the PETG one is bad. And now, there's just like almost in anything plastics, there's so many different varieties and flavors of things coming out. So now there's the idea that you could have shrink sleeves, but make them washable and have the ink come off. And so I asked the PET processor, including Paul, who spoke with this group, I said, well, will that work? And he says, no, it takes a lot of wash water, and we still get the ink in the PET bales, and then that lowers the quality. So anything that does that lowers the quality. And so the APR definitely has good input, but they're not like ASTM. They are funded actually by plastics industry itself. So they also, some of the types that they've approved, Paul has told me, requires really expensive new equipment for his facility. And I think, as we're going to hear from Our Planet today, the poor PET processors are struggling economically to survive. So I don't think we should approve a label that would require a PET processor to put in a couple $100,000 of new equipment. Again, because there's so many existing labels like these paper ones and other ones that lots of products use. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lapis.
I agree that I think this is ready to be sent up to the bigger group. I think some version of this should be one of our recommendations. And this is a great example on the screen because, as Jan mentioned, that PETG is really problematic. The legislature actually, a couple of years ago, took that out of the definition of PET for purposes of the bottle bill. So you can't even call that PET anymore. And it, creates really big problems. I think after the last time we talked about this, a couple people emailed me saying, well, no, we need it for safety in this scenario, and we need it, for shelf life in that scenario. And so I think we should be open, once it's at the broad commission level, we should be open to add in some caveats about unless XYZ, but I don't know what those are at this point, and I'd be interested in hearing from the public.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And like anything medical that had a medical requirement to do it or some special thing. But when I have lots of examples of literally the same thing in one or the other, and to me that says there really isn't, it's not like maybe orange juice or something, but that's where we would get very technical and say, no, that could be an exception, just like we do in all laws in California, right? Like, oh, there is a real reason that's in the public's benefit to say it's better to do it that way.
Yeah. And I think,
if I might just add, sorry, one quick thing. I mean, that is why I asked why, because we had gotten some public comment at some point, I don't remember from who, that said, well, no, the shrink sleeves do provide UV protection or, something. So I don't think that we can just assume that it is simple marketing.
Well, on some, I will say some, it is when I look at, exact same products of mayonnaise and mayonnaise. And also them switching, like I've seen it switch on the same product. They've had it in PET and paper for years. And then the next time I go in the store, it's in this other one. So that is where it will take some technical work. But I've asked product producers, major big global product producers, I show them, I say, why are you doing this? And they said, well, for example, the color of coffee creamer is actually really gross, they said, and nobody would want to buy coffee creamer in those bottles if the consumer really saw what color it was. So they literally told me, we want to put a pretty label on it.
So like Commissioner Fronte and Commissioner Lapis, once it gets up to the larger commission or even to the legislature, scoping it down, and I think we'll see on the next slide, to beverage containers or household products, things that are typically in curbside programs, because I think that's our bigger focus. I mean, we don't have to do a broad every container everywhere. I think if we scope it down to beverage containers and household products, that might help. So I think we have one public comment on this. Kate?
We have three now, very pertinent. That's three public comments about shrink sleeves. So the first is from John Cook with Niagara Bottling. Shrink sleeve labels act in some cases as UV protectors. To add EVOH, which I believe is ethylene vinyl alcohol copolymer, is possible, but also makes them not recyclable. You can use new shrink sleeve that are approved by APR. I would like to see the actual data on water use and and we can see what can be done. The second comment is from Nicole Quinones from Madden Quinones Advocacy on shrink sleeve discussion. As I commented in front of the commission regarding the purpose of the shrink sleeve, for many products, there is a function to the shrink sleeve. Many cleaning products, for example, will degrade quickly when exposed to the light. So bottles used to be opaque colors in order to prevent the degradation. As previously discussed, colored plastic is also not desirable. So companies move to clear plastic with a shrink sleeve with a goal to increase recycling of the container. And the third comment is from John Cook with Niagara Bottling. Crystallizable PET shrink label with wash-off ink are approved and do work. They are more expensive than PETG. I'm not confident that paper labels, I think, will float off. And those are the three comments we've received. Those are published.
Okay. Definitely helpful comments on compatibility. And with that, I think, are we ready to give thumbs up to move this discussion up to the commission level? All righty. And let me adjust my screen. There we go. Alex is back on. For a minute there, I only saw three of us. So, okay, with that, we'll move that item
Just went to get water. Sorry, Chairperson.
Okay. Jan, the next item. Next slide, please.
Okay, this one's simple. It actually says in the APR guidelines and also the Walmart recycling guidelines that there shouldn't be components of PET bottles that are combined metal and plastic. And unfortunately, this top that is used on some beverages, one major brand, I think, in fact, is a real problem. And again, I heard this directly from Paul at Global. I met him 2 years ago, and you started talking about all the havoc that these things wreak because people put them back on with their plastic bottles, and so then they go into the bale and they go to the PET processor, and then it starts going into their process and it wreaks havoc, because there's actually metal with the plastic going into the shredding, and it's just a disaster. And he told me that he had actually asked the brands to stop using it, and they haven't. So I think this is one where they've been asked, they know it's in the guidelines not to use, and we just need to come out harder and say, don't put those on bottles in California. Use a different type. And there's another type of a similar kind of bottle, similar product. Use plastic polypropylene instead. All the other brands do, so stop wrecking California's recycling with these combined plastic metal components.
Okay, and with this one, it's kind of 4 possibilities. The first 2 are basically the same. For plastic bottles, don't allow metal lids or inserts. The second one is for aluminum cans, not allowing plastic lids or inserts because they're both problems when it goes to the next step. And then the 2 possible policies would be allow CalRecycle the ability to determine if the beverage container should be categorized as number 7 in the bottle bill program, or implement a disruptor fee if they don't switch it from, say, PET to a number 7, have a disruptor fee that would help offset the cost for the reclaimers to deal with the incompatible material. So on this, any questions or comments from the commissioners? I don't see, do we have anybody in the queue? Commissioner Lapis.
I think this is probably ready to go. I think it's in some ways simpler than the last one. I haven't really heard anybody explain why we absolutely need them to be that way. And I like these 4 solutions.
Okay. Kate, do we have any public comments on this one?
Let me refresh just to make sure. No public comments.
Okay, with that.
If I may just add, I think this one falls into the category of, like those pull tops that used to be on cans that were really a problem and hurt consumers. I'm an advocate for, if there's something that's just not good, let's call it bad for recycling, then let's say don't use it rather than try to create a management system and have incentive fee to take it out in 5 years, that we should be willing to say, just use a polypropylene top. Everybody else does. We're not banning their product by any means. It's just the one little cap part.
Okay, with that, I think this one's ready to move up to the commission level. So just thumbs up from everybody. Excellent, very good. Jan, 2 for 2. Let's go for 3. Next slide.
And I'm doing this without all my examples. Okay, why do I have a garage full of plastic? All right, so here we go. This one is, actually, I think this one's really straightforward. When I talk to random people on the street, they all say, yeah, do this. So this proposal is that clear, for bottles, PET bottles for beverages should all be made out of clear plastic because there is a market for that. there is a market, 6/10, 10 cents, 15 cents a pound for clear PET. And there isn't. For brown PET, none, green PET. Paul tried to create a market, but even he said, he was the one who created a market for green, and he said, no, get rid of it. There's no market for it. And this does not harm beverage manufacturers at all, because they've all been voluntarily doing it in Japan since 2001. It's actually a law in South Korea. I had examples in the longer PowerPoint, actually how Coke is talking about its clear Sprite bottle in other parts of the world. So other parts of the world have already done this. Coke actually advertises clear is good, clear is recyclable. So we'd just be helping the brands get everybody up to the same level playing field. You know, one of the downsides, not only is there no market for green or brown or blue PET, when it gets separated out of the PET bale line, it actually takes clear PET with it, right? Or it contaminates it. So we'd be recovering more PET and improving bale quality. Consumers would still get to enjoy the beverage of their choice. Beverage companies would still get to sell all their beverages.
Yeah, and this one, when we saw Jim Phukett's slideshow, one of the things I wanted to jump in and point out, it showed the young boy separating plastic, and he had a bag of plastic over his shoulder, and I'm pretty confident that those were all clear bottles, because on the ground under his feet were all the blue and green bottles. So even at that level of technology, they were sorting the clear and leaving the pigmented bottles. And wherever that young man was, I just wonder where those bottles ended up. So I think this one, it is getting into the ban territory. This one is scoped down to beverage containers in the CRV program. So it's pretty focused, but I think it's something that is truly doable. So any other questions from commissioners or comments? Seeing none. Kate, do we have?
I had a comment.
Commissioner Lapis.
I like the idea of getting rid of the colored bottles for beverages, especially. I have a concern with the recommendation that's written, which is not to allow them into the CRV program. I think if anything, that would encourage them to use more colors because they'd rather not be paying processing fees and all that. So I don't think that would be the disincentive we think it is. Could we classify them as number 7s if they are non-clear? And so that would mean a far, far higher processing fee. I don't remember the exact numbers, and I'm sure somebody will, I'm not even going to repeat, but I believe it's
I have it
around 9 cents for the number 7s per bottle.
Yeah. So for a PET bottle, it's 0.002 cents per container is what the beverage manufacturers are paying. And you're right, for a number 7 container, it's 0.09 plus cents per container. It's a much different number.
Yeah, so I'd rather either classify them as a number 7 or create different strata within each resin. Not just have one number for number 1, but have one clear versus one green versus one blue. And I have a feeling that those would be drastically different. But I would not support taking them out of the program.
Okay.
I don't think that's what intended. I think that we can reword that. What was intended is that they not be allowed. Just that's the law in South Korea and some countries in Europe, I'm told too, although I haven't tracked down which one. Beverage companies simply cannot use anything but clear for beverage bottles.
I think Jeff said he wasn't comfortable with recommending a ban.
So, is this where we could give an option up to the on the previous one, we had a whole menu of choices. So, not banning the product, just saying the color. Marketing element. So the option would be to say, no, can't use it, or let's do some management systems to disincentivize, and hopefully in 5 or 7 or 10 years, people will stop using it, to do some other approach of like what you're talking about.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think this one it follows up on the prior slide. Some mechanism, in general, I'm not supportive of bans, but this is one that I think makes sense because there's a great benefit to recycling centers, to curbside programs, and to processors, and ultimately the entire circular economy for PET, because it keeps more in the system and less going to the landfill. So either having a ban on the green PET for beverage containers in the CRV program. So if somebody wanted to do green PET for a pesticide or something else, that would still be an option. But then Commissioner Lapis, with what you were saying, and it ties into the prior slide, giving CalRecycle the ability within the CRV program to have a higher number, that number 7, for a product that's truly incompatible with that bottle type. So I see we have one public comment, Kate.
Yes, and we just got another. The first is from Susan Collins from Container Recycling Institute about colored PET. Another example is that in Norway, the producer fees are higher for blue PET than for clear PET. And then another comment from John Cook with Niagara Bottling. I agree in principle that colored PET is problematic. They are collected and sorted in Mexico. They have traditionally been used for strapping after recycling, and those have been published.
Very good. I'll definitely want to talk to Mr. Cook about his knowledge of what's happening with the colored bottles down in Mexico, because I do understand that they're ramping up production. It would just be interesting to see what their solution is to colored bottles down there. So with that, can I get a thumbs up motion to move this up to the entire commission level? Very good. Okay. On the agenda today, we also had some time for e-commerce packaging, but I have to apologize, Commissioner Dell, I did not include your slide again for e-commerce packaging, but that's definitely an item we will talk about at future meetings. Did have a chance to talk to one of the major stakeholders in the e-commerce business. It's definitely a company that could move the needle in any direction, positive or negative. And I think we've asked them to attend either the November 6th or the November 13th meeting. And hopefully they'll be able to participate and tell us what they're doing in the e-commerce. And I think their information will be helpful for our group to consider what type of e-commerce packaging policy we would want. Commissioner Dell, anything to add on this?
Yeah, so Commissioner Dunleavy and I had a chance to talk with a major e-commerce packager and invite them to come speak. And I'm going to follow up with some specific questions that we'd like them to answer. Seeing this really has to do around the curbside recyclability of their packaging. How much plastic packaging do they use? Where does it go? And what's their plan to get it back or switch to something that is curbside recyclable? So it'll be great to not just hear from their, get a copy of their SD report, but also to hear what their plan is specifically for California so that we can make a good use of our time.
Okay. And then Kate, you had one comment. Is it on the prior?
This is in regards to clear PET.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Susan Collins, Container Recycling Institute. Now that AB 793 has passed and beverage manufacturers have to use recycled content starting at 15% and rising to 50%, there will be a huge need for rPET material. It will really help if all the PET is clear so it can all be used to make PET bottles. That has been published.
Okay, very good. Okay, with that, we're doing very well today. We're ahead of schedule. Kate, can we see if the group from Our Planet are ready to roll for item number 5?
Yes, so Our Planet folks, I have presentation if you want to try to turn on your cameras if possible or test your sound. I have your presentation.
So I have my camera, I'm not able to enable. This is Bob Davidouk. My apologies.
No worries, Bob. So Octavio, I see Scott. I see John. Okay. I don't see Bob. Is that...
Is Rick on the call? Rick Tomlinson?
Rick does not look like he's on the call. And he was... Would you like me to email him briefly? I mean, I think he dropped off, but he was on. Did you want to start or take a pause while we try to get him back on?
Yeah, just give me 1 minute here. I can track him down.
Hey, Bob, you can go ahead and get started, and I'll try to track down Rick if you want to.
Okay, that'd be great, John. Thank you.
And Bob, just say next slide. Like me to move on.
All right, that's what I'll do, Kate. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, we'd like to start off by thanking the committee for allowing us to present this afternoon. We think it's a very important topic for all of us involved in recycling and sustainability. And with that being said, Kate, if you flip to the next slide, I'll give a quick rundown of who the speakers will be for us today. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Our Planet Earth. John McKernan is an advisor and board member of several companies, and he is an advisor to Our Planet Earth. Octavio Victal, he works with Our Planet Earth as well as running Green Impact, his thermoform recycling company. Scott Wilkerson from ReadyPack, Bondwell Fresh Americas. He's the Chief Procurement Officer, Global Lead for Transformation for BFA Americas, Bondwell Fresh Americas. And he also leads the corporate social responsibility and product commercialization efforts at BFA. And then Rick Tomlinson, assuming we can track him down, he is the president of the California Strawberry Commission. If we hop to the next slide, Kate. So Our Planet Earth, some of you may or may not be aware of the company. We are a PET recycling as well as packaging manufacturing company. We're very focused on sustainability. We would love to see an Earth with zero plastic waste, or at least drive towards that. We are very interested in making sure that there are robust closed-loop systems in place to recycle post-consumer plastics. And what we do is we develop unique packaging solutions for our customers that have the lowest carbon footprint possible. Kate, you can go to the next slide, please. In terms of our business model, it's very different than pretty much anybody else globally that is in the business of recycling PET and manufacturing packaging. We've taken a lot of cost out of the production process. What we've also done is put a number of operations under one roof. So we are completely vertically integrated in terms of our manufacturing. So bale comes in one end of our building, and out the warehouse stock doors go finished products. Our 3 primary value streams, as we call them, are extruded sheet, which is then used to make thermoform packaging, and preforms as well. Because of the process that we put in place, It allows us to have a very low carbon footprint associated with the packaging that we manufacture. Rough numbers are 60% lower than packaging made from virgin PET, so from fossil fuels, and about 20% lower than packaging made using the more traditional recycling methodologies that are quite often done in a couple plants, not just one. So we've basically put 3 or 4 plants worth of operations under a single roof. It's a complex operation, but it's one that's very effective and efficient. Kate, you can go to the next slide, please. And we are very much involved in innovation. We think that is extremely important for sustainability to continue to push the envelope and to push the boundaries of what can be done. In terms of material that we use, we recycle PET bottles in our facility. 100% curbside collection is the material that we use. We don't use any deposit material to create our packaging. And we're extremely committed to diverting thermoform containers from landfill so they can be recycled and then reused again in new thermoform packaging. In terms of the food safety of our products, we produce to a level that actually exceeds the FDA's requirements for direct food contact. There are a number of brands out there, beverage brands and others, that have stricter requirements than the FDA for direct food contact, and we built our plant to make sure that we could attain those very strict specifications. We don't pelletize our material. We keep it in a flake form, which is much more efficient and effective. What it also allows us to do is have excellent optical characteristics, so color and clarity of our material. We also have the ability to boost the IV of the material, which means that we can then use it in uses, for example, in thermoforms in freezer-grade applications where you need a more robust and stronger package to handle the cold temperatures. Kate, we can go to the next one. And in terms of PET thermoform packaging, it is, as you're all aware, it's a very significant industry in California, and it really has a great history of sustainability. In California, there's roughly 20 PET packaging manufacturing plants for thermoforms. Estimated probably 350 to 400 million pounds of PET thermoform packages are produced in the state every year with a value of 500 to 600 million. There's about 2,500 direct jobs, plus all the indirect jobs from suppliers and others. Obviously, the industry supports California-based brand owners, the largest being the fresh produce sector, but also retailers, restaurants, bakeries, and others. Brand owners purchase thermoforms from the manufacturers in-state, also from out-of-state, and also foreign imports, typically from Asia. The industry has partnered with recyclers and is committed to sustainability. A couple of examples: over half of the bottles that are recycled in California are used to make new thermoform packaging. And the typical thermoform package produced in California has 50% or more post-consumer content, primarily bottle content. And in terms of industry stakeholders, we really believe it's going to be important that we can divert thermoforms to take the place of bottles, because we're expecting to see a lot of the bottles being collected in state, that materials will be diverted to make new bottles. And so it's critical that we have a ready source of high quality PET to recycle that would incorporate into thermoform containers. And the industry stakeholders, they are aggressively pursuing recycling more PET thermoform containers. Very important to a lot of the folks in the state, and certainly in particular BFA and the Strawberry Commission. They are very involved in this effort. We could go to the next slide, please. In terms of annual packaging, PET packaging sold in California, a little under 1 billion pounds, about 600 million of that PET beverage containers, about 148 million of non-beverage bottles, and then about 214 pounds of thermoform containers. In terms of recycling PET thermoforms versus PET bottles, it really requires the two streams in order to do it effectively and efficiently, especially do high volumes of thermoforms. It's important that they be done sort of in the two separate streams to be available for recycling. Thermoform recycling, it is very viable. It's very cost effective. Within the state of California, it is a project that Octavio has been working on for years. He'll talk a little bit about what he's up to, but right now I'd say the code has been cracked to enable effective thermoform recycling. As we all know, with National Sword in China and some other initiatives, whatever thermoforms were collected used to be shipped to Asia. Now they are not. And in terms of many curbside recycling programs, they do not accept thermoforms in the blue bins or in the collection bins and curbside collection. We would certainly like to see that change. And there's a great opportunity exist for thermoforms to be diverted from landfill and to substantially reduce the GHG associated with thermoform packages. When you look at alternatives to PET thermoform packages, either using more virgin material or material alternatives, neither one of them has nearly the same sustainability story from a carbon footprint standpoint or from others as well. And in terms of the MRFs, they typically don't sort out the thermoforms separately, but they do include them in the B grade bales, typically up to about 10%. Kate, we can go to the next slide, please. In terms of the strong commitment that the industry has demonstrated to thermoforms and wanted to have them recycled, in terms of there's a large volume, over 200 million pounds available to be sorted and recycled. As I mentioned, there's a very manageable process that has been developed to enable the recycling of this material. And PET beverage infrastructure for collection and recycling already exists. It can be leveraged with PET thermoforms as well. The key stakeholders, the brand owners, packaging manufacturers, recyclers, MRFs, trade organizations, they're all working together to make sure this happens. Several companies, including mine, Our Planet, has received a favorable opinion letter in terms of the availability and use in direct food contact applications. There are currently 4 recyclers that are supplying thermoform PCR. There are about 10 MRFs that are currently collecting bales. Certainly not enough material is being collected now within the state. And so it's necessary to look outside of the state and to Canada and Mexico as well to source this material. We do believe that with more local production, that there will be a significant improvement in the volume of collection, and as the use grows, the supply-demand, balance begins to mature. And many brand owners, berry owners, for example, have moved to improve labels, higher costs, but certainly makes the containers more recyclable. And we would very much like to see at least a 75% diversion rate for thermoforms in California. That would allow about a 40% PCR thermoform content in new packages manufactured in California. Some brands are already using about 10% thermoform PCR and are testing to utilize higher levels. And as I mentioned before, it's going to be important as more bottles are diverted to bottles, given recent state legislation for unrecycled content in beverage containers, that the thermoform material is available for recycling. We can go to the next slide, Kate. I'm going to turn it over now to Octavio to speak about Green Impact and the great things that he's been up to.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, commissioners. Well, Green Impact Plastics began operations in 2019. We started designing the whole operation in 2018. And it has a maximum capacity to produce 20 million pounds a year of finished flake. And it was designed to process 100% thermoform content bales. It also produces flake that is suitable for direct food contact. We are located roughly 9 miles off the border with El Paso, Texas. And in 2019, we processed 1.9 million pounds, 4.8 year to date, right now in 2020. And we are seeking for more supply to maximize our production volumes. We also have already secured a building in the city of Vernon, where we intend to build up a second facility as soon as supply is available. That's why it's so important for us to keep those thermoform containers in the blue bin. Can we go to the next slide? If you can see up to the left, you can see a bale of thermoform containers. One of the challenges is singulating these flat containers. Those bales get really compressed. We've overcome those. We've installed several components to, overcome all those challenges in thermoform recycling. That roll stock that you see down there, 15% virgin, 30% green impact flake, 50% in-house, is a clear example that all technologies that are installed right now in the market can actually put thermoform clean wash flake at a certain content. This was done in Royal Interpack. The container is to your right. You can see that beautiful strawberry container. So there's really no compromise in quality. And whatever our Planet Earth is doing with their great technology, 100% thermoform clean wash flake, that is really where we want to see circularity in the containers go to. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Octavio. With that, we're going to turn it over to Scott Wilkerson from BFA.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to talk with you about this exciting topic. So thank you for your time today. So we may be a little bit less known, so I wanted to provide just a moment of background. But you would know us here in the United States as Ready Pack Foods. But we're part of Bonduelle. Bonduelle is a 7th generation family company based out of France, one of the largest vegetable companies in the world. And so products range in the both the fresh, the frozen, and the canned categories of a combination of branded and private label products. Next slide. And around the world, it's provided a tremendous opportunity for us. As a vision, as a company, our objective is to provide healthy food around the world. It is a purpose-driven company in all that we do, and it drives our behavior. And in a moment, when I talk about Bonduelle Fresh Americas and why this initiative and this opportunity is so important. But for here in California alone, in Irwindale, California, we have over 2,000 employees in one of the largest produce conversion plants in the country. And we are a significant employer, and the touch points that we have as we grow in the Salinas Valley and other parts of California, it's a critical part. And we're kind of proud and honored to be part of that in California and really providing food around the country and into Canada. In the US, we have 4 production sites, but by far our largest is in Southern California. Next slide, please. And so I'm hoping you are enjoying some of these products at home as well. So these are some of the things that you would find in the grocery store. We also are out of home. So it's from the kits and single-use items and multi-serve, largely all fresh produce items that we provide. Next slide. And our customers are the top retailers in the world, and also the top out-of-home providers as well. So brands that we all know. And so again, we're a combination of branded and private label in the market. Next slide. But what I'm excited to talk to you about and why this is so important is, as a purpose-driven organization, our commitment is to be B Corp certified. And with B Corp certification comes an entire range of obligations and commitments, ranging from our governance structure to how we treat our employees and how we impact planet Earth. And key to that, as we look at not only the fact that we provide a fresh, healthy food, but the packaging is critical to that. And we want to do everything that we can to make the best environment for our product that we provide to the consumer. Next slide, please. And so as part of that, our commitment is around planet, food, and people. But where this comes into play most importantly is the fact that we've made firm commitments for the use of PCR thermoform. And we have very firm commitments that we're making around recycled content and recyclability, recycle ready, every part of that. And why this is exciting everyone on the call here today is it requires the end-to-end supply chain to make that work. And we can only be effective in the delivery of this commitment and to support the environment in this way is if we have the raw material to be able to support that. So the criticality of going back to from the curbside point of receiving that thermoform container, we want to be bowl to bowl, we call it. We want to make sure that we're reusing the product that we put in the market, and we are demonstrating the fact that we are making an extremely positive difference. And our commitment is that we are absolutely doing this and will continue to drive that in the market. And with that, I will hand over. Back to you, Bob.
All right. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. We're going to turn it over to Rick Tomlinson now from the Strawberry Commission.
All right. Well, thank you to the commissioners, and thanks, Bob, to you and your team at Our Planet Earth for allowing us to join today's presentation. This first slide is just to give you an idea of all the different partners involved in the berry industry and the commitments that we have been making for the past 30 years and the commitments as we transition to reuse the PET thermoform clamshell. And so in terms of just trying to organize a global berry supply chain, because the brands here that you see to the center left, that's their commitment to that global berry supply chain. And so we coordinated and through Strawberry Commission, all the strawberry farmers in the state of California, Blueberries has a national entity. There's a variety of entities across the entire United States that are all listed there in the left column. And then as you go across the bottom, Anna Berries is in Mexico, then Argentina, then Chile, then Peru. And so really, as we started looking at this issue, we started very quickly having to scale up across regions and across competitors. And so if you could go to the next slide. So about 30 years ago, Berries developed this clamshell, and very quickly the packaging companies identified the opportunity to reuse the water bottles. And so we've been fortunate for the last 20 years, the opportunity to be able to use and recycle all the bottles. And as Bob said, at very high rates, we think in many of those years, the most California recycled content of any food package in the United States. But as everyone here knows, all of a sudden, the whole process was disrupted about 3-4 years ago with the China National Sword and other things that were going on. Up until then, we thought we had a pretty good system going. And then we started to learn many of the challenges. And so quickly, the industry started getting together with the packaging companies, started reaching out to the MRFs, trying to understand the whole recycling process. Because think of, 30 years ago is when we developed this, and the pioneers that developed it and started incorporating the recycled content, right, have all moved on. And so we just know that our package has, really high levels of recycled content. And so some of this, we had to relearn in some cases. And so we started coordinating across the competitors, really bringing the entire berry sector together. California, I'm going to say pretty easy because 80% of the strawberries for the United States are grown here in California. But then you start looking at blueberries, and you've got 30 different states, and you've got, for all the berries at different times of year, you're importing from different regions. So we started looking at that, and then we started looking at, well, what are the alternatives? Can we move out of plastic? And we started looking at all those things. And so the image you see there is cardboard trays, we call them. And inside those cardboard trays are cardboard clamshells. And what we learned, this is late 2018 and into 2019, is that the moisture was getting sucked out of the fruit, transferring into the carton, the cardboard clamshell, and then still transferring yet again into the tray. Because we use cardboard trays, that's a standard practice for that product, for the tray. It's just the clamshell inside of it is the plastic. But enough moisture was pulled out where it caused structural defect here. And so, you know, we're still doing research. We're still looking at all the alternatives, but it's very clear right now, for us anyways, that the most immediate thing is maintaining the PET thermoform clamshell for all the benefits that it has around food safety, around food waste, around transportation, very, very lightweight, so we can maximize transportation and be efficient with that. And so the first thing we did is similar to the topic you were discussing on shrink wrap labels is, hey, we have a paper label on our clamshell right now. And we talked to the recyclers, and one of the things they told us is switch to a BOPP label, and that'll make your clamshell optimized for recycling. Won't have any sort of issues. We could do it with the paper, but it causes problems. Not everyone has the right equipment for that. So the industry is already switching over to BOPP labels. In some cases, we have one shipper who's already switched over 100%. We have in total about 2/3 of the industry already underway with different levels of switching over in the process there. And keep in mind, for us, it's not just a production line. You don't just switch over immediately. We have to have the packages made in advance, because then we're going to take them out to the farms and we're going to pack them out in the field. So we have to test all this stuff out in the field. In some cases, for product that's coming, say, from South America, we've got to test that label is going to be durable when it's used in South America, put on an ocean-going vessel, brought into the United States, and then transported and then out onto the customer, onto the retail shelf, and ultimately to the customer. So all that has been going on these last 3 years. And as I said, at this point now, this is the standard that we are implementing, and companies are in various stages. As I indicated, one has already implemented 100%. The second thing is what Octavio and Bob talked about is conversion from the use of PET beverage containers to PET thermoform clamshells, so that we're reusing our own product. And as they indicated, for some folks, we're trying to initially get to that 10% level, and some are doing that. And so we're starting that process. That is more immature than the migration to the BOPP labels, but definitely we have started that process. And so we are in the transition to collecting our own clamshells and using that to replace the PET from the beverage containers, because of all the obvious reasons for where that's going to go as we move into the future. And so our big issue is getting enough of the PET clamshells into that blue bin and into direct return, all the different avenues, so that we can collect that and achieve our commitment. And so that's where we're at today relative to our efforts on recycling. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, commissioners.
All right. Thank you, Rick. We're going to turn the presentation over to John McKernan now.
Okay. Could you flip to the next page, please? And thank you also to the commission for the chance to talk. And so who am I? I had the privilege of being the CEO of Peninsula Packaging for 7 years, and until Sunoco bought us. And about a year after that happened, Mark Murray called me and said, you got to do something about getting thermoform packaging out of the waste stream into the recycling stream. So this is in a certain way an extension of all of that. And not only do I've had the privilege of working with our Planet Earth for the last several months and appreciate what they're trying to accomplish, but Peninsula Packaging has a big relationship, probably the largest user of recycled plastics in California, or at least PET, in a relationship with all of the recyclers in California and including Global, by the way, and a lot of work that Global's been doing on the bleeding edge for thermoforming recycling. They were the first ones to do it, and other people are picking up the ball though. So listen, here's kind of a summary of what's been accomplished so far and what we as an industry need to do. And then the last page is going to be about, we need some help. And that's there's a big ask coming, so get ready. But number one, this it's a big opportunity, and the right people are behind it, right? And we are making some things happen. I think the best part, there's a lot of stuff that everything's technically recyclable. You know that. The good thing about PET thermoforms is it's a big number. They're easy to spot, and you can leverage all the recycling stream that's already there for bottles, for PET bottles. And California is light years ahead of at least most of the country, if not all the country. So it's a big number. It's a huge opportunity here. And reviewing some of the stuff that Bob said already, and maybe some that we didn't, that the big users, the brand owners, and the package manufacturers are in the habit of using high levels of post-consumer. We had a plant in Hollister, California that ran 100% PCR for years. But it was bottles, and that's going away. So all we need to do really is transition out of bottle PCR into thermoforms. And we're getting there, but slowly but surely, and we need some help, right? But this was data that came actually from the Market Development Fund data that over half the bottles that are recycled in the PMD program today end up in thermoform packaging. We know that's going to go away. It's going to all go to bottle. It's going to take a year or two, but it'll happen. These guys have been in the habit of using recycled material. Over the last year and a half or 2 years, we've gone from virtually there's probably 10 million pounds of PET thermoforms that are being recycled in California now that weren't 18 months ago, and it's tiny. It's only 5%, and but at least it's something. If you asked that question a year and a half ago, it was, well, no, actually, it's not happening. but at least we're getting off the ground, right? And a lot of our customers have already committed to things like more expensive labels. It's interesting you were talking about the PET labels for carnation and stuff like that. These guys, they already did it, and it may not seem like a lot, but those labels for a 1 pound strawberry package are maybe 0.4 pennies in paper, and they're 0.7 pennies in BOPP. But you multiply that by 2 billion, and it's a big number. And they've done it just to prepare for the fact that later on those packages are going to have to get recycled, and you're going to get a better quality recycled flake using a BOPP label than a paper label with very aggressive glues and inks that tend to migrate. But, people literally stepped up to the plate, spent money to do the right thing in order to prepare for the future. And now, these brand owners are making commitments, and there's not enough of them, but we got 2 huge representations of lots of brands in California on the call today. But they're stepping up to guaranteed demand of thermoform clean wash flake, which allows recyclers to figure out how to recycle it, package manufacturers to figure out how they're going to process it. And it costs a little bit more. But you got to start somewhere, right? And that is actually all happening, and it has happened. Going to get FDA approval for this stuff, are you kidding me? A year ago, that's a big deal. It's not an easy thing to do. It's been done not once, twice, but at least 3 times and maybe 4. So now, what does the industry need to do? We need more brand owners to sign on. I got to tell you that some of these brand owners are cautious because they don't really know what you're signing up for. Because how do we know the supply is going to be there, and what really is the bottleneck on the supply? No pun intended. It is getting stuff out of the MRFs. It's getting consumers to drop it in blue bins and getting MRFs to separate it. And you got brand owners saying, okay, yeah, I'll do it, but what does that really mean? Is this going to cost me 2% more or 20% more? And if I go out and say I'm going to use thermoforms, like how can you be sure you can actually get it? We got the classic chicken and egg thing, and we need to be sure that California will help us get this stuff out of the waste stream into the recycle stream. All right, and so it's also a commitment from this group to work with you, to work with CalRecycle. And it's not just a California thing. Of course, it's a national thing. It's a global thing. But we made a decision a long time ago. We're starting in California, clear PET thermoforms, period. And we're not going to try to boil the ocean. All right. So could you please go to the next slide? All right. So this is some of the stuff that we need help. And
John, if I could interrupt, maybe just a couple more minutes so we can stay on schedule and then get a couple questions from commissioners.
Perfect. This is the last slide. So this is where we need some help, and this is what we can imagine, and maybe you have some other advice for us. But we've already kind of talked to CalRecycle. We'll continue to. We could use your help to encourage CalRecycle. We want to include PET thermoforms and recycling programs, and we know that you have some stipulations about what goes on the good list and the not good list. But we would love for PET thermoforms to be concluded on the good list, and even if it isn't, we recognize that we're not being collected in 75% of the municipalities. But how do you ever get there, right? And so we need a path, some definitive path to be able to be given a flying chance. I mean, we need to have an opportunity to win here, and we're afraid of unintended consequences that are going to actually discourage people from collecting the stuff that we want out of the waste stream. And then the last comment is about, there's this is probably a real technical issue, but we have a problem. We do know that within the B grade commingled bales that are in MRFs, there is kind of an accepted tolerance, probably mostly from fiber companies, to have up to 10% thermoforms. So we know that a lot of those bales contain 6 to 10% thermoforms. And because of the way the B grade reimbursement policy happens, it arguably the state is paying 60 cents a pound for that stuff. And we can only afford to pay maybe 10, right? And so the state is unintended consequences competing with us to be able to get our stuff out of the waste stream. If you're a MRF and you can get paid 60 cents or 10 cents, which one are you going to do? And so we're asking for some help around that, and we recognize that we don't want to pull the rug out from under the MRFs either. But long term, we want the MRFs to separate, grab those thermoforms, and of course, somebody's going to have to do something to keep the MRFs whole. And ultimately, the B grade bales should be higher quality. So this problem will solve itself over time, but there's obviously a transition problem there. So that's our big ask, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, very good presentation. I probably have about 10 questions, but I'll just do a couple. I mean, thermoforms, if my numbers are correct, the amount of thermoforms in the waste stream is equal to aluminum cans. I mean, it's a very huge volume that's out there. I know that there's growing demand for the use of thermoforms. And when we had our list of recommended items, some of the criteria that we looked at was accepted in the curbside programs, sorted at the MRFs, and then accepted at recycling centers, and then long-term market conditions. And I think with thermoforms, the issue that is the challenge that you're bringing up is only 10 of the MRFs are separating them. I think there's value at 10 cents a pound. That's as good, if not better, than many of the other commodities that are on the list. But it's the cost of handling and separation at the MRFs. So with the facilities that are separating the thermoforms, and getting 10 cents instead of 60 cents. How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And what do you think needs to be done to get the other MRFs so they are doing the separation?
Yeah, so I can speak to a couple. So PRCC has actually been a great advocate for us, and I've been to a couple of Burtech MRFs that we're separating it, right? And they're doing it just because it's the right thing to do. At least they're doing it while we're there. All right, and it is kind of a break even for them. They as you guys probably know, if you have near IR separation equipment, then it's moving all the PET down one conveyor, and they've added a person. If you look at the number of pounds they're getting, it's probably a break even. Right? 10 cents a pound is probably what it costs them to get it, but that's because there's so little of it actually that people are bringing to curbside. So that math would change quickly. We've also been to Monterey, where in that scenario where you're probably getting a little bit of post-industrial thermoforms as well, in addition to curbside. And the amount of material, they're way over 10% in terms of thermoforms that come into that MRF. And so in order to stay below 10%, they need to add people. And it's one-offs more than, in order to be cost effective, the MRFs, and Jeff, I know you would know this a heck of a lot better than me, but you'd have to have near IR and probably some of the artificial intelligence equipment to be able to grab PT thermoforms. And you can do it in a cost effective way.
There are new technologies, near infrared technologies that can differentiate from a bottle and a thermoform. So that is something that just launched.
Okay. Commissioner Lapis, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a bunch of questions.
Hey.
Maybe. Oh, Jan's waving. Oh, I think she was ahead of me.
I was ahead. I'm speaking. No, thank you. Is it all right if I call Q? I want to thank you. As a chemical engineer, I just want to thank you. I love the numbers. I really love the intent of what you're doing. I love fruit. I love berries. But I'm really concerned you're actually only a small part of this big clamshell waste stream. So this number of 200 million was cited. Can you tell me, and then I have a follow-up question to that, is that just berry clamshells? Or is that all these clamshells that come from the deli and from the bakery with the cake in it and all this contamination? What is that 200 million?
Okay, so 200 million is what, this was CAW data, so I'm sure it's perfect. But that's the amount that consumers are quote unquote disposing of in the state of California. Okay, so it's everything. It's a portion of that that's berries might be 10 million. It's a small number.
Oh, berries might be 10 million of the 200 million.
In that, yes, of what consumers throw out, but yeah. I think more, just as important, if not more so, is California. This is one of the things that we make a lot more of in California than we consume, and so we're exporting a lot of it. So I'll throw an unauthorized number that the berry guys in California are probably consuming about 100 million pounds of the, let's say, 400 to 400 million pounds of PET thermoform parts that are actually formed in California. So if we can use, let's say, 75% of what's been disposed of, which is 160 million, then that has to be reused as a PCR material in new parts that are molded in California, which is about 40% PCR content, which seems like a lot, but the reality is that those packages already in California are at least 50% PCR, but it's bottles, not thermoforms. So they're
right. Okay.
Yep.
So that'd be great. So we'd be exporting our plastic waste, you're saying, to other states, but it'll be clean. Okay, well, when I bring this idea up to others, what I get hit with constantly, and as a chemical engineer and understanding contamination, taking all these clamshells back that really have been in this direct food service, again, with greasy things and so on, that's a lot of contamination. You've been using PET bottles, which are really clear, to put into the clamshells, but the practicality of getting this very contaminated waste stream back, I think, is problematic. And these numbers, you're saying you take 75% back, but you'd use 40% of it. So would half of the return material actually be processing waste then, because it's so contaminated?
No. Yeah, think about what you're getting 160 million pounds back, right? Because it's 75% of 214, and you're making 350 or 400 million new. So it's going to be converted into brand new products.
So what do you think? So right now for PET bottles nationwide, you actually have a 28% material loss, and that's clean PET. That's a NAPCOR number. So collecting all these back, you can't get 28%. I mean, better than that. That's a PET bottle. So what material efficiency do you actually think you'd be able to regrind and get back into?
You're going to love this answer, but I'm not the one who's going to give it. Octavio?
You can recover 70%.
It'll be at least as good, and here's why. You don't have to worry about green. You don't have to worry about caps. Right?
Well, hopefully we won't have to worry about those anymore. But thank you. That's my question. Again, I compliment you on how hard you're working to do this, and from the strawberry or the berry brands. But I'm not convinced that the rest, the brands of whoever makes the cakes and delis and all of that are really committed. And I think this contamination is going to be an issue. But thank you. We can tell you're trying hard.
Okay. Commissioner Dell, thank you. I have Commissioner Lapis and then Commissioner Oseguera in the queue. I'd like to try and wrap this up by 2:30 so we can move on to some other items. So Commissioner Lapis.
Yeah, and I'm really glad we're getting into the weeds on this, because it is complicated and it does affect so many different parts of what we're tasked with. So for the folks who haven't been following the commission that closely, we sort of have a couple different charges. One is to issue recommendations on increasing recycling, helping curbside, increasing markets, et cetera. And that's where stuff like the commingled rate really fit into that conversation. But separately from that, we are supposed to identify what is and isn't recyclable. And the legislature said that if it's not getting recycled, it's not recyclable. And I don't know how closely you guys have been following the conversations we've had, but right now it looks like the thermoforms are not getting recycled at a rate that's sufficient to call them recyclable. And I think our current recommendation, although it hasn't been adopted, I think our current draft recommendation is to not include PET thermoforms as a recyclable material. And that would inform all of CalRecycle statewide education. And in general, that would be the position of the state. But that said, you guys are talking about a lot of things that you're working on now and how things are going to change, and the investments that our plan and Octavia are making are real investments. And somebody mentioned the chicken and egg dilemma, and I think this is a great example of the chicken and egg dilemma. Because we're sort of struggling with, do we tell, I think we heard maybe 3 or 4 or maybe every speaker mention that we need to get more of these into the curbside bin. And I think we're leaning towards telling people to keep it out of the curbside bin because it hasn't proven to be recyclable. Okay, that was a very long-winded way of saying, there were talks of all these new commitments. I didn't see any really specific numbers or timelines. What is your argument to us that you're different than, say, expanded polystyrene that's had commitments for 30 years but never actually hit any one of them? What's your argument for why PET thermoforms should be different, or what is happening in the near term? Are there PET thermoform recycled content requirements or mandates, or whatever is happening?
Well, this is grassroots effort. So 10 million pounds are being recycled today that weren't. There's one. And there's at least 4 companies that have spent millions of dollars to make this happen. There's 2. And you got the Strawberry Commission in and of itself, it probably represents about 100 million pounds of PET thermoforming in California. So the presence of Rick and his group, that not everybody's signed on because they're not sure if they can get material, right? Or how much it's going to cost. There's a huge commitment, and it will happen. But and then the Strawberry guys. I'm sorry, having BFA and ReadyPack on this call, and Scott and his company are committed to make great things happen. And this probably isn't the place to disclose what who's going to do what for whom and when, but large brands are ready to do this, and we need some time and a runway to get this thing off the ground. And quite honestly, the last thing you can imagine from our perspective, I understand your perspective, right? Because anybody can come in here and say, these are all great things I'm going to do. Here's what we have done. Here's why it makes perfect sense. And right now, if you guys say, don't put it in curbside recycling, we just got kneecapped. It's like, wow, you're actually hurting our progress. We need you guys to open doors for us, not close.
And if I could just add, I think that's a very fair question. And I understand that there's a lot of other folks using PET thermoform, but I'll just tell you from California berries, and literally I have the commitments for the entire North American berry supply, right? First, we've been doing it. We've been buying and incorporating post-consumer content in the clamshells for the last 20 years. But we know we got to change and get now our own clamshells. We've already started buying the BOPP labels to optimize the recycle readiness. We're already spending that money. That process is going. Folks are already starting at low specifications to incorporate thermoforms in. And because we recognize the exact same issue that Commissioner Dell raised, there's a lot of other folks using the clamshells. And so now we're out talking to those other folks to say, how can we get you to make the same commitments we're making?
Mm-hmm. Just a couple quick comments or thoughts. And this might be to you, Rick. It seems like the 10 cents that you guys are paying, or not you guys are paying, but the value, the 10 cent value of thermoforms is obviously not enough to get people to put more people on the lines and pull them out. So is there a commitment there to increase that amount that's being paid? Has that conversation been happening? And then also a question, I guess, for everybody. Our timeline is that we're supposed to have preliminary recommendations by the end of this year with final recommendations by middle of next year. So in that time frame, will something drastically change in terms of legally binding commitments or something that we can point to say this is different and it should be on the list?
So those conversations have been happening. We've already, at the end of last year, several companies already put out purchase specifications to include thermoform clean wash flake. As John was describing, we don't know what it costs. When we switched to the BOPP label, we had price gouging going on until we were able to stabilize the market and really get a true and actual cost. And that's just for a label that already exists. That's not for a whole supply chain that includes a collector and a sorter and then a conversion and then the packaging company. So there's no question we're going to have, to work out market issues to get this whole supply chain in alignment. And the way we've started is by starting out with, a 10%, give us enough for 10% thermoform clean wash flake. Let's see what that costs. Let's figure out how much that drives the market and drives the system. Are folks like our planet able to make the investments with those kinds of commitments? How much more, right? We don't know. Obviously, there's a point at which we couldn't pay certain costs, right? It would we wouldn't be able to pay certain costs if they got to a point. So, but we don't know what all those costs are, and we don't know the type of market opportunities that companies will see, or the kind of market disruption from everybody else trying to compete.
For the sake of time, I do want to get to Commissioner Oseguera. We do have Commissioner Valle. I'd like to hear the 3 public comments if we can get to them, but we are going to have to end this discussion in 5 minutes. So we're going to have to be really quick because we do have other topics. And then I will ask the committee's permission if it's okay if I set up a follow-up call, possibly with Commissioner Lapis and the presenters. So Commissioner Oseguera.
Just a quick comment. I mean, obviously, we're looking for market creation and a functioning market. Currently, we're looking at supply of X, right, which produces basically a payment of 10 cents versus what the market is paying, which is 60 cents. And so we're making a comment that says add supply to the current marketplace, which actually in basic economics means the price that's going to be paid is going to be lower, which is going to be a discouraging situation. So the delta right now that exists are 60 cents to 10 cents. So, you know, my comment is, as a commission, we have to look at functioning markets that truly pay for the cost of processing and getting those materials. And without a strong demand, that creates a functioning market. You know, we will continue to talk about this delta that exists today, which is significant. So that was my comment. So to make it short.
Okay.
And one of the
Commissioner Valle, if we can move on to Commissioner Valle. Commissioner Valle's question.
Thank you. I have to agree with Commissioner Oseguera. Rick, how long will it take you to do your analysis and get to the price point that you think your industry, or the people you work with, can come up with some kind of analysis that's definitive that you can bring back to us?
Yeah, we don't have the ability to do that. That's going to be from the recycling supply chain, and because it's their business, right? We don't know to your points you've made, deltas, and you know what, as John was saying, at 10 cents maybe it's break even. So at 60 cents, that seems like a lot of profit margin. We don't know all those things. I don't know that that's a true statement that I just made. And we're in the berry business. We're not the ones to do that analysis.
Yeah. Okay, last real quick follow-up. Before there was this kind of packaging for strawberries, there was something else. Has your industry looked at alternative packaging?
Yes, if you recall in my slide, we looked at fiber. That's one that continues to be looked at, and there's still a lot of other folks looking at other alternatives further out. But the most immediate alternative would be fiber, and that's currently just not viable right now. Small scale, I would expect to see a little bit of that small scale, but on the volume that we're talking about and the distance that some of these products move, it's not a solution right now.
If I can add briefly to that, so 2 things in terms of what's changed is you have, like with us as a brand owner, of making a firm commitment of leveraging this PCR thermoform as a critical part and a significant demand in the market, at least from our view. And with regard to fiber, we operate in a cold, wet supply chain with a product that's a modified atmosphere. So you have a certain oxygen transfer rate and all kinds of interesting things. There's not a technology, there's not a solution in the market that we found or that's viable to make this work. So right now, in terms of as part of this journey, this is a great next step in terms of opportunity to do the right thing while we continue to explore finding a solution in the market someday in the future.
Okay, very good. Kate, public comments if you could.
Yes, and there are a few more. There are 8. Many of them are very short. Bruce Magnani, Association of Plastic Recyclers. The Association of Plastic Recyclers believes the PET thermoform market is real. While it is emerging, this market has a very large upside. We have worked with both the customers of PET thermoforms as well as processors, and it has been demonstrated that the process works. The Commission has a great opportunity to make recommendations that will accelerate the growth of this market. This is a great opportunity to transition a market, improved version, and boost recycling in California with great environmental benefits. Second comment from Stacy Katz with Waste Management. The The issue with PET thermoform recovery and curbside programs is a systems issue. The equipment that the MRFs use to separate out PET is an optical sorter that doesn't sort on shape. It just sorts on PET, injection, and thermoform. The MRFs sell bottle grade bales, and the PET thermoforms are a contaminant. With adequate financial incentives, MRFs could add technology to remove the thermoforms, but the biggest issue is that you need a bunker to put it in, and most MRFs are constrained by space. They simply cannot just add a new bunker in the middle of the system. If the world wants to solve this problem, there needs to be a much larger discussion about how to solve it. What happens to all the thermoforms that go to the PET reclaimers? Can you not recover it from them? Is there some other solution? That's 150 words. It's a little longer. That's unpublished. Susan Collins with CRI. This presentation on PET thermoforms is really interesting. It's also difficult to see over the GoToWebinar platform. It would be great if the PowerPoint could be uploaded to the Commission's Google Drive folder ASAP so that all of today's participants can see it. Next comment from John Cook with Niagara Bottling. Could the Commission support the establishment of secondary MRFs that could collect mixed plastics from numerous MRFs and make thermoform bales in a cost-effective manner? Two comments from Shirley Freereeks. What about takeout restaurant market? I want to make them use plant-based containers. Might this be better than thermoform? Still have problem of no proper recovery. And her second comment is, please consider that we want to encourage new alternatives like thermoforms and plant-based alternatives, create the diversion stream, and we can get the people to buy and recycle. Another comment from John Cook. While the U.S. Plastics Pact is completely voluntary, the signatories have set public goals of 30% recycled content by 2025 in all plastic packaging and a 50% recycling rate for all plastic packaging by 2025. And our final comment from Susan Collins, CalRecycle pays tens of millions of dollars to curbside programs each year for CRV PET bottles. CalRecycle's research has shown that millions of dollars of payments are overspent on non-bottle items in PET bales, and the PET thermoforms in the bales are a contributing factor to these overpayments. As of now, those are all the comments we have received. Those have all been published.
All righty. Well, John, Scott, Octavio, and Bob, thank you for the information. Definitely very good. And I'll see if we can do a follow-up, possibly myself and Commissioner Lapis. The goal of the commission is to increase and stabilize existing markets that are out there. The PET bottles, there's definitely been an issue, and we'd like to stabilize that for the reclaimers, the recycling centers, and the curbside programs. The intent of the commission is not to kneecap any markets that are out there. But we also don't want to put a burden on jurisdictions or programs that don't have the density or the capability of sorting certain items. Thermoforms, definitely there's a market out there. It's something that would be a local ad. So if there's processors such as Burtech or Monterey that are doing fantastic jobs doing the separation, focus on those markets as local ads. But at this point, it's not something that is meeting the criteria to be on the state list. But it is something that we do want to develop that runway for products like thermoforms to get them onto the statewide list. And it'll be working with stakeholders like yourself and then processors to make sure that the product that they're sorting pays for the processing and some of the collection. So the entire burden of the collection and processing costs is not borne by the consumer and the haulers. So again, thank you for the participation today. I'm sure I'll try and schedule a follow-up with your group.
We thank you and your idea of just giving us a fighting chance. Get it. If there's criteria that we don't fit today, fine. Give us a pathway and don't make it more difficult for us. We already have a big challenge on our hands, and you know that.
No, you presented a good solution addressing the commingled rate. That's something that we're going to talk about in the next subject with bottle bill. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Kate,
weekend.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right, we were ahead of schedule, but due to a very, very interesting subject and one that, it's a big item that's out there. We went over today. So we probably have about 10 minutes to talk about some bottle bill problems and solutions. The first one, seeing if we can get consensus to move this one up to the commission level. I don't know that it's going to be too controversial, but we've talked about this before. Adopting a policy to pay the grocers, CRV, and handling fee payments for material taken back into the stores. And then as a follow-up on this one, with store exemptions, changing the existing statute that allows for a maximum of 35% store exemptions, changing that to 35% store exemptions by county or jurisdiction. The freshest example of this right now is up in Eureka and Humboldt County. Their only recycling center has closed, but all the stores had filed exemptions. So Eureka, Humboldt and Eureka, I think right now they have one gas station that will take containers back in the store. So I'd like to see if a quick discussion on this and possibly move this as a recommendation up to the commission. Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none. So would we like to move this up to the commission for additional discussion? Thumbs up.
Could I make a quick comment?
Yes.
So I support moving this up to the commission, but I think I need to do a little bit more research into these, especially number 2. So we will probably have to have a conversation about it at the commission level.
Okay. Very good. Kate, if we could do the next slide. And then CalRecycle, in their AB 54 report, they talked about the convenience zones. And I think they made a good recommendation in that report. And I think we could support that by moving a recommendation or moving this item up to the commission for additional discussion, but to adopt a policy to allow CalRecycle or another entity to expand or adjust the convenience zones, the size, how many recycling centers need to be in a certain area, should they be on a dealer site or another site and get handling fees. And then a part of that, change the existing statute to allow payment of handling fees when not on a dealer site in underserved areas. And that's part of what the AB 54 report was talking about, because there's the handling fee incentive for convenience zones, but it's only eligible if you're on a dealer site. But there's areas that are very close to the dealer sites that might be more compatible for a recycling center. And an example might be a closed gas station across the street from a grocery store. Might be compatible for a recycling center, but it doesn't get handling fees unless it's on a dealer site. So I think these two work together by allowing CalRecycle or another entity to adjust the zones, maybe on a regional basis, a city basis, and then allowing handling fees to be paid when not on dealer sites in underserved areas. And then the last one on this would be establishing caps on handling fees by recycling center and by jurisdiction. So you don't have a site, a handling fee site that might be getting $20,000, $30,000, and you have a scrap dealer 2 miles out of town that's not getting any. So any discussion on this one? Okay, seeing none. So do we want to move this one to the commission level for additional discussion before possible recommendation? Thumbs up from everybody? Good. All righty, Jan, I'm catching up to you, 2 for 2. So if we go on to the next one, Kate. This one, we talked about it at the last one. Maybe some more discussion, but looking at the overserved and underserved areas, to adopt a policy to use new or existing additional funds from the beverage container recycling fund to start up new programs in underserved areas. So one of the things I would like to talk more about is when money is available or paid out of the fund, if it's new or surplus money, that it's used for recycling centers or redemption opportunities in underserved areas. So that way you run into an area like Eureka that just lost their last recycling center, or San Francisco that only has one for 1 million people, that if there are additional funds in the program that could be paid out for other opportunities, we make a recommendation to use those to fund redemption opportunities in underserved areas. So any questions or thoughts on this? Commissioner Valle.
Thank you, Chair. I think the key here is knowing what the existing funds balance is and getting an analysis of the fund. And I believe our committee would have a better understanding of the capacity of CalRecycle in the statewide system if some kind of analysis, financial, could be done so that we can proceed. And when we make these kinds of recommendations, we can back it up with some data. Because while this is a great and needed conversation, unless we know what the balances are, where they're headed, while we can use them, if not, what the restrictions are, we're just shooting in the dark.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on this? Okay. And Commissioner Valle, you're right on point, and I do think we need to get some more information and analysis, and I think that's going to lead into the next one, because the state is now publishing on a monthly basis a 24-month look back on all sales of containers, redemption of containers by recycling centers, curbside programs, and collection programs. And I would definitely like to get that CalRecycle to confirm the numbers when it comes to dollars, because as much as I would like people to trust my numbers, it would be great to have CalRecycle verify them. But I've run the numbers, and looking at fiscal year 18-19 compared to fiscal year 19-20, their information is showing that beverage sales are up about 5%. Container returns are down about 5%. And the net increase to the fund exceeds $100 million of unredeemed deposits. And I think my Excel skills are pretty good. I would be happy to share them. But ultimately, I would like CalRecycle as the holders of all the information to verify them. So I think with this one, we're not at that point to move it forward until we get some analysis and confirmation from CalRecycle. So Kate, if you could move on to the next one. Next slide, please. And that goes to the next two topics. We talked about increasing the deposit to 10 cents and possibly adding wine and spirits. Currently, the beverage container fund is a $1.3 to $1.4 billion program, and that's with deposits at a nickel. If we're going to make a recommendation to go to a dime, I think we need the information and some analysis from CalRecycle on what that potential impact would be as far as money coming in and potential money going out. And the same would be said with adding wine and spirits. So I think we need to get the data request from CalRecycle before we have any additional discussions on this. And I've reached out to Kate, has provided the initial request, and then I've reached out to Deputy Director Keeney, and he responded that he is looking to see what information they can provide, but initial indications were the analysis is not something that they could share publicly. But for this committee and for this commission, I think we need to have their analysis because, again, I could come up with information. I think Container Recycling Institute could come up with information that is all very good, very accurate. But I think CalRecycle needs to verify and provide the information. So I don't think we can spend any time talking about these two items until we hear from CalRecycle. Any thoughts on this? We got a 10-minute warning from Kate.
I also have, and I'm just on an aside, there was another data request at the last meeting in regards to salvaging data, and I did ask, and CalRecycle does not have any data or collects anything on to do with salvaging CRB from a curbside recycling program. So that I know that was Commissioner Oseguera's request.
Okay. So I think that wraps it up with item 6 and even item 7, data review and request. I think we're going to wait on CalRecycle to see what they can provide and hopefully present at future meetings. Any other information that commissioners would like to get from CalRecycle? Okay, seeing none. Kate, next slide. All right, we have a couple meetings scheduled for November 6th. Hopefully we can have more bottle bill discussion. Policy discussion on plastics. I think we'll need to switch that to the e-commerce since we missed that. And hopefully our major brand would be able to attend that meeting or the one on the 13th. But those are the only two meetings that we have scheduled. I think we'll wait until November 6th to talk about scheduling future meetings. So, okay. Today, I think we had a very, very good meeting. We have several items on design for recyclability that we're going to move forward to the commission level for additional discussion and refinement. And hopefully it'll be some more recommendations that we can move on and add to the report. Same with bottle bill. I think we have 2 items that we can move up to talk about at the commission. But before we talk about some of the bigger ones, we're going to need that analysis from CalRecycle. So, any other thoughts, Commissioner Dell? Sorry.
I defer to Commissioner Lapis.
You know, something that the guest speakers mentioned is that we don't have a clear process laid out for how somebody would get added to the list or what they would have to show in order for us to make a change before the July timeframe. And I think we should talk about that. I think that's a fair ask. I don't necessarily have an easy answer, but I think we should talk about that.
Well,
definitely agree.
I volunteer to put that together, a draft of that together. It's really taking all the assessment we did to say what's in the 15 list and turning that into a process of this is what you have to do to get on the list. So I think it's straightforward, and I volunteer to do a draft before the November 6th meeting. If that's okay.
Commissioner Dell, thank you for that. And the pathway onto the list, I think, is going to be very similar to the 7 criteria to be on the list originally. So if there's a way to identify or demonstrate marketability, separation at the MRFs, acceptability at the recycling centers, something to give the state the ability to say, yes, this item has a market, long-term stable market. Yes, the facilities have a way to do the separation that has a market value that will pay for the processing and collection. So again, the burden of recovering that product is not strictly borne by the waste haulers, the processing facilities, and the consumers. So I think the pathway is going to be very similar to the 7 criteria that determined who's on the original list. So Commissioner Dell, I think helping out with the draft will be useful information, and I'll look to add that to the November 6th agenda as well.
And then my comment was going to be in the 2019, 18, 19 grant cycle, Cal Recycle actually gave, I think, 5 grants to companies totaling $19 million to expand plastics recycling. And one of them was Envision, I think Peninsula Plastics. I can't remember all 5. And I was wondering, maybe we should ask them to come in and give a status of what's happening. Although maybe this is something that should go to the Market Development Committee. Really ask, how have those projects gone? Have you expanded? Really kind of to do a due diligence to see how that money was spent, but actually to see, is it work, or what if it didn't work, whatever expansion they did, why? So it might be further on in a commission meeting later or a committee meeting later, or maybe we should take it to market development. But there have been taxpayer funds invested in facilities in California in the last year cycle, and I'd like to see what the outcome of those have been.
Okay, that'll be good. See, we have one public comment remaining.
Yes. One comment from Shirley for Reeks at Elders Climate Action. Sorry for butchering your last name, Shirley. Would banning wine and spirits bottles being plastic, keep them in glass to reduce the plastic problem. And that has been published. We have no other comments. Just a reminder, Chair, that I have to publish the agenda for November 6th by the end of the day on Monday. And then for November 13th, I'll have to publish it the Monday after, so November 2nd. So we'll be in touch, as you know.
Homework assignments are always appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, any final comments before I wish everybody a wonderful weekend? Seeing none?
Yes, Jeff.
All righty, thank you. Seeing none, everybody grab your favorite beverage and find a recycling container somewhere. Enjoy. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.